This Israel report is brought to you by the Blue Agency. Your Israel property is in good hands. Owning properties in Israel can be a great investment, but challenging to manage if you're based abroad. The Blue Agency will manage every aspect of your property, finding and vetting tenants, maintaining your property and getting it rental ready, negotiating contracts and collecting rentals, reporting back to you regularly. The Blue Agency has built a reputation for trust and confidentiality over 20 years. The Blue Agency, your Israel property is in good hands. Contact us at www.theblueagency.com.
The Israel Report for the latest news and insights with Anthony Reich.
Anthony Reich, Boker Tov, good morning. Hope you're well.
Boker Tov, yeah, it's been a busy week. And of course, during the course of this week, we also saw the Maccabi games wrapped up as closing ceremony earlier this week. The games participants were somewhat reduced this year in comparison to prior games because of the difficulty of getting to Israel, the war situation. Many people still quite concerned for their personal safety when coming to Israel. But I have to take my hat off to the team from Cuba,
Wow.
who numbered around 52 athletes. Admittedly, many of them already actually live in Israel. They are Cubans from before living in Israel, participated in their games under the banner of Cuba. But there were 29 Cubans who came to the Maccabi games from Havana. And coming from Havana is not an easy joke because you cannot actually fly very, very long distance from Cuba. Apparently, there isn't enough jet fuel in Cuba to fill up a plane enough to allow it to fly, say, to Europe. So the Cuban team had to fly from Havana to Panama, which is relatively nearby, and there are flights from Cuba to Panama, apparently. From Panama, apparently, then to Paris. Some of them had to fly from Paris to Austria. Others took a flight, I think, from Paris to Abu Dhabi, and finally to Israel. 4 days of traveling just to get from Cuba to Israel, and of course, the same on the way back. So you have to really respect and take your hat off to those Jewish participants from Cuba who really went the extra mile, literally, in order to come from the Maccabi games. And apparently for them, it was all worthwhile. They had a great time, not only on the sporting front, but combining and getting to know other Jewish participants from around the world. Not a big community in Cuba these days, but nonetheless,
I was
they
wondering
took home
about
a few
that.
medals.
Do you have any sense of how big that community is? Can't be massive.
I don't know off the top of my head, but let's have a quick look and see if we can find some statistics about it. While we carry on talking, I'll try and see if I can find something. But it's a relatively small community, and I see here something around 1,000 to 1,500 people.
Amazing.
Jewish community in Cuba. But again, I mean, not only the Cubans, there were participants from countries that have never participated in the Maccabi games before. Taiwan, for example, sent participants. So really an incredible event. And of course, there will be another few years ahead now until the next games comes around. But for those of you who are listening out there and who are thinking, maybe not, is this something worthwhile? I would very much encourage you, not only from a sporting perspective, but it's a great social occasion, a great opportunity to be part of something which is really massive. So I think it's a great event and something which is well worthwhile being part of.
Let's talk about the latest news. There was a further marginal escalation, and we've been following this as it ramps up slowly in the conflict between the USA and Iran last night, as the US expanded areas in Iran that it attacked. So, and then I heard comments about, but we don't know, this is just trumping Trump, saying he would consider boots on the ground. Where are we? What is going on?
So it all kind of feels a little bit like we've been repeating for the
Mm,
last few days almost the same thing. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it other than to say that the new things that have come out, and again, when President Trump makes comments, and he did make comments yesterday about, well, we will attack energy sources and we will attack bridges, but that's only going to come later. But lo and behold, yesterday apparently there were some power stations that came under attack, and so one has to be very cautious about believing everything and anything that the president says. But the Iranians have come out saying that they are fighting an existential war. They've now come out making some quite strong statements, which surprised me a little because I thought that that would probably not be what they want to say, even if they really feel it. But that is what they've said. And of course, the price of crude oil, Brent crude, has gone up to a high of in the $80, $84 range, something like that, which is higher than it's been over the last month or so. So there's definitely a slow ramping up, and I've no idea exactly at what point all of this potentially breaks open, but I think we are gearing ourselves up for something more substantial. And the areas that the US have attacked have not been limited only to the area around the Straits of Hormuz. Now, apparently, areas also in the area of Tehran, the capital. And we've heard of some Iranian soldiers who were killed in not last night, but the night before in the attacks that were carried out. So there is definitely a sort of an increase in the intensity of what's going on. And I expect that we'll continue to see that over the coming days.
yeah, it's just really quite unbelievable how this has continued. I would have thought that this would have already moved to some form of discussion.
Yeah. I mean,
Sorry,
it's
yeah.
interesting just to take a moment and think. I don't know if there's a strategy behind what the US is doing, if they've sort of got a medium-term strategy that says, this is the stage one, we're going to move to stage two, stage three, others will become involved. I'm not quite sure. Or if it's being played like one day at a time. But this does feel like it has some thinking behind it. And so obviously we'll just, monitor that to see where it goes from here. Not sure.
Mm. Let's talk about Israel and Lebanon because they've concluded 2 days of talks in Rome. Do we know what has come out of this?
So we know that Israel and Lebanon have formally signed a peace agreement, and therefore, it's obvious that there will still be further discussions. What's interesting for me, there are two main things that are really of interest for me, or maybe three. The first of which is that it's interesting that this round of discussions took place in Rome. I'm not quite sure what the significance of Rome is, and we always try to find the significance behind what the choices are. There's very, very seldom things that happen coincidentally.
Mm.
So I'm not quite sure why Rome was chosen as a place, but I guess it's relatively easy for all parties to get to rather than to have to go across time zones to the United States. Clearly, these talks are still being brokered, being sponsored by the United States, and US officials are still involved in that. So it's not just bilateral talks here, it's still very much being sponsored by the USA. The other thing that was of interest to me is that hardly any newspapers have reported this. It seems to just be under the radar. Even in Israel, I have to say, the article in the paper that I found was really tiny, wasn't part of the headlines at all, was almost non-existent, very, very low key. And so there isn't much value, I suppose, at least press value, being given to these talks. The third thing, which is really interesting, is that the talks mostly center around those pilot areas that the two parties have agreed will be used to try to clear Hezbollah control away from Lebanon. And a few pilot zones have been identified. The idea is that the Lebanese government and the Lebanese army will go in there and will clear them out, will clear Hezbollah out of those areas. Israel will stand by and watch and be available to help if necessary. But the idea is that a few chosen zones have been selected in order to somehow clear Hezbollah influence out of there. And that really was what these talks were all about. Who would believe that two countries that have been at war with each other for almost 80 years and have had no diplomatic relations whatsoever, would then finally come together, strike an agreement, come, with a lot of goodwill and good intention, and the talks center around a third party that is really hijacking and potentially preventing all of this from coming into existence. So that's really what this is all about. There have been many discussions about how what's the best way is to go about policing this in the future, whether United Nations forces should be used. We know how unsuccessful the United Nations force in Lebanon has been up until now. And so I think Israel is relatively reluctant to try that route. But certainly the idea is, how the heck do we get Hezbollah out of the way so that we can proceed with putting this peace in place? That's really what it's all about.
And what is, in terms of the Lebanese government, surely the parliament, the influence of Hezbollah, surely the most important thing to do is for them to remove Hezbollah from governing the country.
So that's, easier said than done. I think there are two things which are interesting. First of all, that the Prime Minister of Lebanon, Dr. Nawaf Salam, we remember he's the former president of the International Court of Justice, sat on the bench when that case against Israel was being heard, and showed himself to be very anti-Israeli, actually, in his approach at the International Court of Justice. Now the Prime Minister of Lebanon, and seems to have really done a 180 in terms of coming at this and being very committed, seemingly, to this peace agreement and to doing whatever he can. Of course, the whole issue of Hezbollah and what the Lebanese government can or cannot do is very, very easy for us from the sidelines to dictate. But the reality on the ground is that Hezbollah is so entrenched and so influential within Lebanese society, and also very well funded by Iran and very aggressive, even militant, in terms of making sure that they get what they want. So this is a very difficult path for the Lebanese government to tread. Even though they do represent the majority view in Lebanon, there seems to be little doubt that the Hezbollah supporters are in the minority, but they're significant enough to cause a lot of trouble and to potentially, perpetuate that war, the civil war that has been going on in Lebanon already for many, many years. And I think that's really the issue, that because of the civil war and because of the lack of security that Lebanon has had for so many years as a result of this extreme Islamist influence, the Islamic extremists have really come in and messed up what is really a fantastic country and a country with a lot of potential. And so the question now is how to remove the extremists. And we use Hezbollah as the obvious representative of the extremists, but they're not the only ones, to remove the extremists from their influence and from their control, so that the more moderate Lebanese, of which there are many, and they are, I'm guessing, the majority. I'm pretty sure they're the majority. And don't forget that Lebanon has many Christians as well as Muslims living there. And in the most part, they would welcome the opportunity to get friendly with Israel, to open the borders, to see free trade, to tour the countries backwards and forwards, to really have friendly relations. And that sentiment is very much echoed by Israel. So Hezbollah and the extremists are really the obstacle to peace here.
Let's talk about the Prime Minister planning to head to Washington over the weekend. That's to meet Trump. Do we know what's on the agenda?
Well, not really, but we could guess that there are a few things. And of course, there's lots of speculation about why now? What's this timing about? Why does he have to go to Washington now? It didn't really seem to be planned a long time in advance. And so one wonders whether it might be tied to the strategy that the US is employing right now in Iran, and whether the Prime Minister Netanyahu is being briefed and maybe even requested to be ready to join this battle within the coming weeks. We do recall that prior to the previous major conflicts that we've had with Iran over the last couple of years, not couple of years, but really it's been just a little bit more than a year that the major conflict with Iran, the open conflict with Iran, blew out. We remember that each time that one of the major conflicts was about to happen, the Prime Minister visited Washington. There were direct talks going on between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. So one wonders whether this potentially means that there might be some greater conflict with Iran, which will involve Israel coming up in the next few weeks. In addition to that, of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu is eager to get as much airtime from President Trump as possible as he heads into this election. The election will be at the end of October. The Likud right now is not looking like it will be the largest party in the Knesset, depending on which opinion poll you believe. There's a great possibility that the Likud will no longer be the largest party in the Knesset going forward. But of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu has understood that any airtime that he gets from President Trump will help his cause in terms of, doing better in the election, getting more support from the public. Because I think the closer he seems to be to President Trump, I think the more the Israeli public are inclined to support him. Not sure now with the way that President Trump has behaved in recent weeks and months, whether that's still the case, but I think overall that's the strategy that's being adopted. So those two things really seem to be the main points of discussion or potential points of discussion, even though we don't really know very much about what he's planning to do. We understand that he's due to fly out, I think, on Saturday evening, that the meeting in Washington is set up for Monday sometime. I presume there will be a press conference of some sort where we will not hear anything about what was really discussed behind closed doors, but some statements will be made, and we will have to wait and see exactly whether, the next couple of weeks might reveal some of the details that were discussed between the two leaders.
All right, and let's hold the discussion, because I definitely do want to talk about this on Monday. The municipality of Bnei Brak intending to implement gender segregation on some streets. So let's hold that. It's a crazy, in my view, but strange conversation, and one worth having. Let's do that on Monday. Anthony Reich, thank you. As always, wishing you a fantastic weekend. Shabbat Shalom, and we'll catch you then, Monday morning, 7:45.
That Israel Report was brought to you by the Blue Agency. Your Israel property is in good hands. Owning properties in Israel can be a great investment, but challenging to manage if you're based abroad. The Blue Agency will manage every aspect of your property, finding and vetting tenants, maintaining your property and getting it rental ready, negotiating contracts and collecting rentals, reporting back to you regularly. The Blue Agency has built a reputation for trust and confidentiality over 20 years. The Blue Agency, your Israel property is in good hands. Contact us at www.theblueagency.com.